Welcome to Fun with Annuities with your host, me, Stan the Annuity Man, America's annuity agent. Can annuities be fun? Can contractual guarantees be fun? Absolutely they can. Find out the brutal facts about annuities with no sales pitches or high-pressure nonsense. Just the brutal and factual annuity truth, which is all you need to hear. Let's have some fun with annuities, and let's have that fun start right now. Welcome to Fun with Annuities, the number one annuity podcast on the planet. I'm your host, Stan the Annuity Man, America's annuity agent, licensed in all 50 states. As you know, with the podcast, Fun with Annuities, our saying is living the reality, not the dream. And you can find us on all major podcast platforms. We also have a Fun with Annuities YouTube channel if you want to see me and the guest interact. It's kind of fun. And I also have a Stan the Annuity Man YouTube channel, which has over 400 informative YouTube videos for the consumer. So without further ado, let me introduce our guest today. I'm so happy that he is here. His name is Kerry Pechter. He's the editor and founder of Retirement Income Journal. It reaches way over 7,000 readers each week and recently celebrated its 600th issue, which is fantastic. And he launched this in 2009, and really to create kind of a digital-only subscription-based publication that is not biased whatsoever. He is a very smart guy, which is the reason he's on. He has authored a book you might already have. It's called Annuities for Dummies, and he's also written 2 other nonfiction books, so we share that. We're both writers. He's been an editor for Annuity Market News. He's written for Vanguard's individual annuity marketing department. His articles have appeared in every major publication, from the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Los Angeles Times, anywhere that smart people are reading about financial stuff, and especially the retirement income category. He's there. Fun fact about him, he's the graduate of Kenyon College in Gambier, Ohio. And if you don't know this, and this is a fun fact, and my team researched this, Kenyon College has 60 national titles in athletics, which ranks them 4th behind Stanford, UCLA, and Southern Cal. So a Division III juggernaut athletically, Kenyon College. He studied creative writing there, and other, in fact, he studied creative writing on a teaching fellowship at Indiana University, but I'm assuming he did the same type of studies at Kenyon. He didn't list that, what he got his major in at Kenyon, but I love the Kenyon College story. Without further ado, welcome to Fun with Annuities, Kerry Pechter.
Hi, Stan. It's great to, you're an old friend, and I know we share a lot of the same perspectives about annuities and retirement income.
We sure do. I think I stunned you with the Kenyon College facts, though. That's pretty cool. Let's jump right in. Recently, and I read Kerry's weekly, it comes out every Thursday, and every time it hits my email, I stop what I'm doing. I see what he's saying and what he's trying to get across to his readers. It's very heady stuff. And recently, on his July 1st publication, and from that I've chased him down. You got to get on my podcast. He had an article called "The Insider's Take on the Bermuda Triangle Strategy," and hang in there with me because this is interesting. I'm going to read from the first 3 paragraphs from his article, and then from there we're going to dig in. So let me do that, and hang in there with me because this is important, and it will be the foundation for this conversation. From Kerry, first paragraph. The Fed's low interest rate policy over the past decade has pinched the oxygen supply of U.S. life and annuity companies, especially publicly held firms. Low bond yields have squeezed their profit margins and forced them out of old lines of business into new ones. Several companies have employed what Kerry calls the Bermuda Triangle Strategy. The points of the triangle are, characteristically, a life annuity company with a large in-force block of usually fixed annuities with guaranteed returns, a Bermuda-based or other offshore reinsurer, which we'll get to, and a major buyout firm or money manager. last paragraph. Generally, the life annuity company will cede, C-E-D-E, the annuity contracts to the reinsurer. The reinsurer typically pays the life annuity company a ceding commission for the assets. Then the money manager, often affiliated with the reinsurer, then earns fees for investing the assets. When I read that, Kerry, it sent a chill down my spine, because I wrote an article for Market Watch years and years back about this fictitious smoky-filled room with high-level single malt scotch, where the mavens and the masters of the universe with all the money were looking at these insurance companies and saying, boy, wouldn't we like to get our hands on that money? That's probably more of a conspiracy theory than what the truth actually is. But I need you to kind of, I don't want to say dumb it down, because my listeners are very smart, but explain the Bermuda Triangle theory, and then we'll go into your article where you interviewed Mike Castor, who's the executive vice president of Willis RE, which is a reinsurance. So with that, jump in. I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Well, it's pretty. It's not that hard to understand in the macro view if you just think of the triangle. And a company, if a company can do all these things, which is have a life insurance company which brings in long-term money, money that's going to stay where it is for years, and where there are even penalties for early withdrawal, market value adjustments, surrender penalties, all kinds of protections for the issuer. It's a way of bringing in money that's not going to move and is not going to ask you a lot of questions about what you're doing with it. So that's a reason to own a life insurer. And it's always been an issue, and a reason to own a life insurer or any insurance company. Warren Buffett's been doing that for years to bring in capital. And so if you have a piece, you have the life insurer is one piece. The asset manager is really the most important piece. This is a company that takes the money that has come in from the sale of annuities and invest it in the ways that they do best for high returns. But in the case of an insurance, when you're dealing with insurance assets, there are limits to the amount of risk that you can take with them. And then the third piece is the reinsurer, and the reinsurer provides an extra margin of reinsurance is a kind of leveraging where you bring in another partner to share some of the risk, and to the extent that you share the risk, you free up some of the capital or the reserves that are backing you can run your business more cheaply with less money that you have to put aside in low risk assets. And the accounting part of it is really not my specialty. But those are the pieces. And after the financial crisis, you had kind of a perfect storm in a way of changes in regulation, changes in interest rates, changes in the customer relationships, of changes in the annuity products that made sense, all kinds of changes that sort of brought the insurance companies to the attention of the asset managers, like eventually now all the big ones are KKR and Blackstone and others brought it into this, and they found a ready audience. The life insurers were desperate. They had, especially the foreign-owned life insurers, and the private equity companies had their own reasons for looking for safer assets. They wanted to emulate Warren Buffett, for one thing, who uses his property casualty companies as a resource. So they started gradually, and then in a flood, acquiring either blocks of existing annuity business or better yet, life insurers, and setting up reinsurers. Now, this started off gradually, and it has now become kind of perfected in a sense that you have consulting firms and reinsurers positioning themselves as what they call insurance solution providers. So they'll
Great.
come to an insurance company and say, you're petrified that you promised to pay 4% on existing liabilities, which for the customer is their life savings. And you only think you're going to be able to earn, a safe 3% going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And they see themselves being swept towards a kind of waterfall, which is not good. It doesn't mean that there's going to be a failure or a crisis or anything huge like we saw in 2008, but it will mean that they will have to dip into their own capital to make up for the lost investment returns, or they will have to, if they can't do that, they will have to sell out to another company.
Well, and this is this podcast, obviously, is a consumer podcast. I would say 99% of the people listening and viewing are consumers. They're not in the business. So they're trying to figure out, okay, Stan, the annuity man, you brought this up with Kerry, this Bermuda Triangle. How does it affect me as the consumer? Because if you're in rural America, middle America, flyover America, and you're buying annuities, and now Stan's brought up the thing with Kerry that these people are selling off blocks of their business to masters of the universe. It is a little bit of a red flag. I know why the annuity companies do it and the life insurance companies do it is to get that upfront money to make that balance sheet look better. But the way that I understand it, even though they're selling off the block, they still are liable for the claims paying ability that they sold, correct?
Oh, yes. And there's a general relief, in fact, among regulators that at least these liabilities are now in the hands of investment mavens who are more likely to be able to cover the liabilities.
Let's hope.
So
Let's hope, right? Is there any oversight on the leveraging or derivatives or any type of super uber aggressive investment strategies that when they sell the block of business to someone in the Bermuda or Ireland or wherever these reinsurance places are located, any oversight on those investments?
Well, you've got a kind of a balkanization as usual in the regulation of insurance products. Mm-hmm. You've got reinsurance in Bermuda, which uses a different accounting standard from the United States, uses standard accounting and not GAAP accounting, sure. Which creates some ambiguities about how much reserves Bermuda will require, and also these regulatory havens are not as transparent as some of the domestic in terms of what assets are being held behind the annuity liabilities, which is the public savings.
And I think that's the rub. I think that's the concern because, as you know, annuities are confidence products. They're transfer of risk confidence products. And as you you put it in your article, which I love, which is it's an already fragile image that the annuity industry has. Yeah. Does this make it more fragile as these stories get out from people like you that understand the business and understand the intricacies of how this works? Do you think this hurts the industry? I know the regulators like it, but I really don't care about them. I care about the consumer. Yeah. If you're John Johnson in Des Moines, Iowa, does this make you sleep better, or does this keep you up at night?
It cuts both ways, Stan. Okay. And so you have to be able to weigh these two things in your mind, one hand on the other. Mm-hmm. Where it helps, if you're an existing annuity holder and you like the terms of your annuity, and it is now being backed by people who advertise themselves as the smartest guys in the room, mm-hmm. that would be a cause for comfort. On the other hand, as these annuity liabilities move from company to company, there's some question about whether the service will lag. And and this is where we get into, it matters. This is an article I wrote, published yesterday. well, let's back off of that for a second. That's kind of a punchline. We can get to that in a couple of minutes.
Save it. Yeah.
But where this concerns me is I'm not the only person who is alarmed at the talk now, the proud discussion of the acquisition of permanent capital. And when somebody starts to talk about my savings, and I have an annuity as their permanent capital that's dumb money that can be used for whatever purpose, and that they're crowing about this to their shareholders, that makes me nervous. I would at least like to have an insurance company that it tells me that I'm of great value to them, and so as these annuity liabilities get sold to companies with different motives and priorities, there's a possibility that the service on your annuity is not going to. If you've ever had to settle an estate, you know that some companies are much harder to get your money back.
Sure.
If you have, say,
sure,
a 401k that you inherited that's custodied in a certain place, depending on the culture and the priorities of that company, you may have a very hard time getting your money out of them. And if you're looking to start an annuity income at a certain date in the future and you're expecting checks every month, you don't want to be in a position of having to call somebody and say, "Where's my check?" You want to be, you don't want to be the last one paid.
Well, what jumped out at me, you said something in that what you were just talking about, but there were two words that jumped out at me, and I wrote them down. And you said proud discussion. And proud discussion means that the masters of the universe are sticking their chest out and saying, we've got this. It's easy to say things like that and to be confident in a raging bull market. And I always say that a lot of the money managers that are out there, I have cowboy boots older than them, and they have really never seen down markets or problems with markets. They've only seen things go up, which the masters of the universe, the smart money, as you say, it makes me a little queasy because I've been doing this for 3 decades with major firms, and Dean Witter and Payne Weber and UBS and Morgan Stanley. I did all that, so I understand. I know those guys. I've met and those ladies. I've met them at the cocktail party. But it concerns me, Kerry. It really does.
Well, here's why it should concern you, is because your interests are not aligned with the people who have your money.
Exactly.
And now it's particularly important for me to talk to you about this because you understand that with a traditional income annuity based on your life expectancy, there's pooling there, and that pooling generates a return for you.
Correct.
And the new products and you and I have both talked about in the past, we sort of bemoan the idea that source of value is less and less appreciated.
Agreed.
Okay. Well, I'm saying that pooling value, which is the result of you committing your money for a long time, that's not in these products. And this is vital to the consumer because they're now, and you and I have talked about, the creep of an insurance product towards an investment product. And so what we're talking about,
contracts. They're contracts.
They are contracts, and there is a life element in them. But instead of actuaries determining the outcomes of and the benefits, you have quants. You have a complete. I want to get to. I don't want to go into something esoteric like the difference between quants and actuaries. One prices liabilities, the other prices risk, or one price, or they're different people. They look at different things.
Definitely,
and they come from different places. Now, so what this means is is that the products that are going to be sold are the products of greatest interest to the asset manager and to the life insurer, who are all related now. And so I'm afraid, and I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for this, and I'm in a conflict because I have people who are talking to me off the record about
Sure.
what they think, and they can absolutely not possibly be quoted because they would never eat lunch in this town again.
Right.
So what you are getting a product. It's not an insurance product. There's no risk transfer. You're just taking
with these structured products that are coming out. And I've always said this, the annuity industry, and there's many different products, as you know, but I'm just saying this for the consumer. It's a transfer of risk strategy that typically provides for principal protection and or long-term and or lifetime income. So principal protection, lifetime income is the primary two things that people solve for. The problem with the annuity industry, and I've been saying this for the last decade, is everything that they're doing is for the growth story, the market return story, instead of focusing on what I think the demographic tidal wave of 10,000 baby boomers want, which is lifetime income guarantees and principal protection guarantees. I don't understand, other than them wanting to make profits, them doing that and not focusing on the lifetime income story, which is the monopoly that the annuity industry has. It confounds me to this day why, and I know that what they're going to say, and this is the reason that me and you we neither get Christmas cards from the industry. Well, you don't understand, Stan. We're doing these complex products with these structures and this. I don't care. All I care about is, will the customer, my customer, get the contractual guarantee of the policy that they have in their hand, period.
Yeah, I don't think it's even, I don't think that anyone is going to, if they read the fine print, they're not going to be cheated out of their guarantee. But what they're going to get is they're going to pay a lot for a very tepid form of protection. One thing I learned, I worked for Vanguard for years, and one thing I learned, there were a few general guidelines, and if you have 10 years to invest, you don't invest in short-term bonds. People are putting money into 10-year fixed indexed annuities that have virtually no risk of not returning at least their principal to them. And so what you're doing is you're buying insurance for walking to the mailbox and back in the morning. You apparently, I don't understand if there's a place for this product, but once you get into the design of the new products with the volatility controlled indexes,
right,
and all kinds of other protections,
yeah.
If you've ever read a document, if you've ever read a fair warning, like written by a lawyer, you know that it's written not for you, it's written to protect whoever the lawyer is working for.
And all of the buffered annuities and the structured products that are coming out, and we're not talking about the simplistic annuities, the SPIAs, DIAs, and QLACs, and MIGAs. Those are very simplistic. The ones that I always say, if you can't explain it to a 9-year-old, you shouldn't buy it. Those are the ones. You ask a really good question in your interview with this reinsurance guy, Mr. Castor, and you said, quote, "So the life insurance cedes a potential expensive liability and gets cash back at the same time." And then you ended it with, "Hey, that sounds sweet. That sounds great." But that's not it, right? I mean, it's not totally sweet.
Well, this gets a little complicated.
Let's go there.
The money, this is all done in paper. This is all paper transactions that are no money might move around. It's just a change in the reserves. Some of the alarm bells went up when the companies were Now this goes back to which side of the trade are you on? If you're an
Yeah.
investor if you're an investor in a publicly held life insurance company and they get cash back out of these reinsurance deals and they use that cash back to buy their stock back from their shareholders at a premium, you and the Wall Street and the Wall Street Journal are just, happy.
Right.
And but if you're the permanent capital and your savings has been sold to Bermuda, or it looks like that, your money doesn't actually go to Bermuda. I
No,
mean,
I get it. I
it,
get that. One of the things that Mike Castor, when the person you were interviewing
mhm,
for the listeners, his answer was, if the reinsurer sees future value in the block of business that they're purchasing, it will pay a ceding commission, which is the equivalent of a purchase price. That commission would result in a direct improvement in the selling company's capital position, which explains why the selling company is doing it. But
right.
once again, I could give a crap about that. All I care about is the consumer. Is there a list of the reinsurers and the activity, and how can the consumer, or can Stan the Annuity Man, the top independent agent in the country, get a list of what's going on behind the scenes, behind the curtain? Or is this just all trust me stuff?
There's people working on this. I can mention an advisor group. There's an advisor who has a product that I'm probably going to have I don't think it's really, I
Well,
can't
let's
really
talk about that
talk about it.
off podcast, and if I deem it appropriate for my clients, I will put it on my site. But what you're saying, if people are working on providing that transparent list.
Yes, there is a group of advisors who, there's one advisor in particular, and he's growing an audience,
Okay.
who's concerned about about not being able to see the assets that are backing the annuities, and he's changing the companies that he buys.
Well, me and him both. I mean,
This is where it comes,
yeah,
this is where it gets explosive,
yes,
and where I have to be really careful.
yeah.
Uh,
Don't do anything that off podcast. I want that person's name, because guess what? He's going to be on the podcast, because we're going to dig into this. Because what kills me about the annuity industry, we always have this argument. Well, should annuity people be fiduciaries and fiduciary standards? Listen, if you're advising people on their money and their retirement, by default, voluntarily, you are a fiduciary, or get out of the business. So everything anyone's doing out here should be in the best interest of the clients, which is, I'm so happy that you're on, because we're digging into something that is new, that no one really talks about, but it needs to be talked about.
well, it's interesting. I heard a comment yesterday from a consultant that covers this area. Again, a person who can't possibly be quoted, which puts me in a terrible position. But they said you always have to look at both sides of these things. And they said the regulators are more concerned about solvency than suitability right now. And they don't have bandwidth to do everything at once. And I got the impression that they're so relieved that there's a light at the end of the tunnel for covering the liabilities, which is the work that the asset managers are doing to try to get higher returns in a low interest rate, that they're not paying as much attention. They're not focusing on the suitability of the products, that an insurance person should not be selling somebody something that's so safe that they don't need insurance on it. They don't need to pay it. They don't need to bring in the overhead of a life insurance company, because it's too safe to be in that category. And the average person, especially the average risk-averse person, who's being told that, my God, the stock market is at 36,000 and it can only go down, and interest rates can only go up, and your bonds will, crash, and scare them to death and say, why don't you park your money in this thing? It's ultra safe and it gets upside for 10 years. That's not suitability. And I want to call that out at the risk of offending a lot of my
Yes.
subscribers.
It's a great sales pitch, but forget sales pitches. We're talking about contracts. So I agree with you. I think from going back to the fiduciary, which for people in English that means putting the client's best interest ahead of the advisor, agent, whoever's recommending whatever, is putting the client's interest. And if that's where the industry keeps pushing us, then we need to have all of the information available on these annuity companies and life insurance companies before recommending. And I think that you're doing an unbelievable service to the consumer. And I'm going to make sure that you're going to get the credit for ripping the scab off of this thing, and making sure people understand that this is something we need to look into as an industry. This is something that we need to make sure that the consumer understands. And I'm not being a conspiracy theorist. I'm just saying, let's keep an eye on people, because we all know big money isn't always moral, and there are bad people in every industry. And we just have to make sure that the people that have worked their rear ends off to buy a contractual guarantee and to transfer risk, that they're taken care of. I mean, when you said solvency versus suitability, and they're more interested in solvency, and all the annuity industry talks about is suitability, I'm like, wait a minute, you're talking out both sides of your mouth here. You get focus on what you want us to do.
Well, the regulators can live with solvency. Solvency, as long as there's solvency, it's the
Valid.
Suitability is mushier, and it's spread out among a million agents. And but the fiduciary thing, I've never, when I first heard about the fiduciary rule, I thought, I don't understand it. You either, and I learned about the fiduciary rule by watching Saturday Night Live. I'll make this brief. John Candy, the late John Candy, is running a food repair shop, and Paul Simon comes in with a bag of pretzels where the pretzels inside are all broken. And John Candy looks at him, he looks at the bag of pretzels. He's like assessing it. He's, figuring it, trying to give him an estimate on it. He says, listen, Paul, I could charge you, $300, $400 and to repair every pretzel in this bag. But I'm going to level with you. The bag costs $1.99. And you can get another one right around the corner for that price. And I'm going to level with you. And so Paul Simon goes, so I thought, really, it's that simple.
Well, in fiduciary, if Bernie Madoff had a plaque on the wall that said he had passed a test and been labeled as a fiduciary, does that make him a fiduciary? No. So fiduciary is inherent, and it's voluntary, and it's a given if you're in the business. Well, there's another thing that popped out in the article that was interesting to me about, it sounds like, Mike Castor knows what the heck he's doing. This the person you interviewed in the article. Yes, but he talked about vetting the relationship between the life insurer and the reinsurer and all these masters of the universe, which popped immediately in my head is, do they all do that kind of vetting, or is there a little bit of wild, wild west here?
Oh, well, this is a problem that we haven't talked about so far. It's the affiliations between all three partners. I mean, if you're all working together,
you're churning yourself.
Yes, you can do anything. If you don't have arm's length, if counterparties are working together,
there is no counter. If counterparties are working together, there's no counterparty.
Right. Right. So, and this is where we get into dangerous stuff, because I cannot impugn you cannot make, broad brush accusations of anybody's intentions.
No.
You just can't do that. That's
unfortunately, we can only do that after the fact.
Yes,
that's unfortunate. Is after the fact, when the shit is hit the fan and there's a problem, then we can go back and say, I would like to have something in place where I love what you said about the counterparties. I mean, there should be some type of regulation that there should be no commingling, intermingling, or in English, churning themselves. if you own the other company can charge whatever the commission they want to charge or fee because you own the company. It just,
Right.
there's so many problems there inherently. And going back to the consumer, we got to bring it back to the person listening to this. Is this really comes down to a lot of these new structured products that I always tell people, anytime the interest rate environment's low, banks and insurance companies, they start creating products to sell to people.
Yeah.
They just start, that's where it happens. And that's the impetus for these quote unquote creativity that you're seeing, correct?
Yes, you can blame it. You can blame it on that, but we can't just say, well, we can't do anything about it because it's the low interest rate and we're stuck.
Yeah, you're moving around there, so whatever you're doing, we got some bad audio that last little sentence you said. So.
Well, we can't simply. I'm sorry. I've got the sun suddenly pouring into my window, and I didn't.
Yeah, but you look good. You look good, Kerry. So don't worry about it. It's a spotlight on you. So go ahead.
So no, I was just saying we can't just say, oh, it's the low interest rates and people know that the low interest rates have a certain danger, but they're so busy counting their stock market gains that they don't need to look at it. I wish rates were higher, only because I don't want to get into discussion of interest rates. But you can't that alone. Now I would like to talk for a second about, I have some thoughts on what people should do in the face of this.
Absolutely. That's what this is all about. Yeah, we've obviously laid a pretty good foundation. So let's pivot to that. Well,
here's the way I think about it, which is the way you've written about it. And I mean, if your liability as a retiree is your monthly income, your basic monthly income, if you adopt that model,
mm-hmm.
and that should be covered by guaranteed income.
Mm-hmm.
And today the prices of income. So you really want to go out and you want to buy whatever that income you need. Let's say it's another $2,000 a month or $3,000 a month. Okay, so well, I think you should use some of your stock market gains. I agree with Wade Pfau that you should use your bonds to buy your guaranteed income with, but buy an income annuity with. But I also think that the low interest rate, while it has taken away from the income annuity, it has given, on the other hand, to the stock market. And I think that you should just supplement, your bond portfolio with some stocks. Don't let taxes rule your life. It's more important to have guaranteed income, and supplement and buy as much income as you need. Income is expensive. Stocks are not as expensive, so you get a break there. And buy yourself the guaranteed income that will give you,
I agree,
peace of mind in retirement. Just buy the income.
Well, and Wade's going to be on the podcast in a couple of weeks, and we're going to dig into that as well. But as people know, they can go to my site, theannuityman.com, and run quotes, whether they want to do a reverse engineered quote and that's a 24/7, 365. And these are commodity products, transfer risk products. I always tell people with lifetime income, there's no ROI until you die. I mean, and most people in a world that we don't have pensions, as you know, Kerry, they need that income floor, that guaranteed amount that's coming in with the other annuity they already own called Social Security. And I've just been pounding that into the table for the last decade plus of, you own an annuity for what it will do, not what it might do, which is the contractual guarantees. And there's no perfect time to buy lifetime income. What I like about Kerry's newsletter is called Retirement Income Journal. And it's all about retirement income. At chapter 2 of your life, I'm going to step on the soapbox and step off it quickly. But when you're at chapter 2, it's all about the guarantees. And yes, you do need stuff in the markets. Yes, you do need growth. But this comes back to what we were talking about. The annuity industry wants your growth money too. And that's where the annuity industry and I get in an argument with, the annuity industry should not be all about the messaging should not all be about growth. And currently, that's where it is, because those products are the most profitable, not only for the issuer but the agent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the suitability issue comes into play, and is an issue. But these structured products are they're fun and games when the market's going way up. It's easy. But when we have some volatility and choppy markets, and maybe if we ever go back to normal market type environment, boy, this is going to get interesting. Don't you agree?
Well, I don't have a problem with the registered index-linked annuities. I think they make more sense because the client is taking some risk, but I don't think that they're.
We can argue about that another day.
Okay, but I don't see why they're. But to me, they're the same as structured products, and I don't know why you would need the late. You're risking the option. You have an option budget. The option budget restricts. And I don't understand why they're implicitly insured products. I don't understand why they need the further expense of a life insurance company overlay. And
I agree.
The only reason to have the life insurance overlay would be that it's hard for a retail investor to go to Wall Street and it's more expensive. You have to go to a bigger bank to get a structured product for yourself, and that's expensive, and it's custom. And what the life insurance companies have done is to take that and made it a mass-produced, off-the-shelf retail product. So it would be hard to get a RILA registered, but RILA is not on the table for today, and they don't really do much with retirement income. So that's the limit. I'm sort of limited in my interest in RILAs because they're investment products.
And give the acronym definition of RILA.
Oh, it's registered index-linked annuities.
Got it.
And it differs from a fixed indexed annuity in that you can lose money. Your lower end is buffered, but not zero.
And you know what I call those, Kerry? I call those copay annuities. Because if you're sharing in some of the downside. And that's where I get in an argument with, well, heck, if you're going to do that, I mean, why not just go buy real investments with real growth? I understand their argument coming back to me, but the buffered products are messy, and they are hard to understand for the consumer out there. As I really wish the annuity industry would go toward a more simplistic structuring of products so people can understand them, or else there's going to be issues down the road when people say, I don't know, I didn't know that's what it did. And they're I think as an industry, they need to be aware, be careful of selling these, like you said, they're structuring these products and selling them to the masses. Well, the masses don't understand what they're buying. They only understand the sales pitch at the bad chicken dinner seminar, and it sounds too good to be true, and they're buying it based on trust of the advisor. No. You have to understand the good, the bad, the limitations, and the benefits of every annuity contract, period. And that's where I know for a fact that these structured buffered type products, in most cases, in my opinion, from people that call me, they're not being explained properly. And maybe that might be the agent's fault, the advisor's fault, or the industry's fault. I don't know. But the bottom line, I don't really care whose fault it is. The customer needs to know what they're buying.
Yeah.
Period.
Yes. I think that people need to understand risk, and that gets a little complicated. But the simpler thing to understand with annuities is just that the core value of an annuity is longevity risk pooling. And that's the dividend you get. And it has nothing to do with the markets. It's a diversification from the markets. And why would you buy a life insurance product that has nothing to do with longevity or mortality?
Bingo.
And you and we've been talking about this I started
for at least a decade. I know that.
Since I started.
I'm talking about me and you and our conversations, at least a decade.
Oh yeah, our conversations and separately probably 2 decades at least.
Yes.
And it's it's if it's more complicated than that,
Well, and Mosh Milewski, Wade Pfau, and Stan the Annuity Man are all about mortality credits and transfer of risk, etc. And Kerry Pechter. And if those four musketeers who've got a long time in the business are saying that, then why are the annuity companies going in that other direction? And I think it's just a herd mentality. One last thing I wanted to go back to one of the points
no, it's very simple. The reason is simple. The companies went from mutual to publicly held after 2000 or around 2000, and they're and an ownership, and they had higher profit
Bingo.
benchmarks to meet, and
Bingo.
they had to get and you can't get higher returns from using bonds. You have to go into the stock market.
One thing that you wrote in here about letters of credit, and one of the things that Mr. Castor was saying in your article that you interviewed him in the July 1st edition of your Retirement Income Journal, is that, he was saying he'd rather see the assets held in a trust to back up the transaction. But what you were pointing out was a lot of these transactions are done using letters of credit. I don't want to go into the weeds of that, but that to me is a huge red flag, because a lot of games can be played there. Do you agree?
Well, this is one of the fuzziest, parts of the whole thing. I can't really. What we're talking about, a letter of credit is traditionally, a very simple thing. It means your bank here in New York, works with a bank in London, to guarantee your money, or it represents you with a letter of credit on your behalf. So that's a very simple thing. The problem with what's happening in Bermuda is that you have letters of credit used say a pledge, a letter of credit of $1 billion or $100 million is being used to back a annuity as a reserve against losses on the annuity. And the problem is that this letter of credit, it's not clear whether that's really committed or not, or whether it's not, whether it's really solid, whether it's whether it's just talk, it's not a real asset. It's a promise of maybe to get an asset if one is really needed in an emergency.
It sounds like the gray area. I mean,
well, it is a gray area, and these are all gray areas, and I would emphasize that I don't believe that I don't have any reason to believe that anybody is breaking the law. Sure. They have teams. There are many lawyers who are making sure that there is no violation of any law, and so. But I'm a big believer in that you have to look at if you're not following the spirit of the law, the letter of the law is going to be pretty flimsy. But that's another thing. I don't believe anybody is breaking the law, and I wouldn't want to.
I don't either. I'm not implying that, but what I am, forcefully saying, as people know, is annuities are not about the life insurance issuing companies. They're not about the reinsurer. They're not about the advisor. They're not about the agent. They're about the consumer. And I think the annuity industry just needs to reel some things in here and remember that the demographic tidal wave of baby boomers are depending on them to back up these guarantees and to be transparent. And I think one of the great things about having you on, and I certainly, we've spent most of our time on the Bermuda Triangle issue, which I think is very important for us to expose. But in future podcasts with you, I certainly want to dig in deeper on other items, because I think you are a somewhat of a lone voice on the annuity industry from a retirement income standpoint and from how the sausage is made standpoint. And I think what you're doing is very, very important for everyone to understand, what's happening behind the scenes, what's happening behind the curtain. Let's talk about the wizard behind the curtain. Let's talk about the so-called masters of the universe and how that might affect the consumer. In closing, do you have any comments or advice or sage words for the listeners as we close this out?
I would work with a company that where you feel like you're the primary customer and that you're not the second or third in line to get paid. And if somebody is talking about your life savings as their permanent capital, I would work with someone else.
Sage advice. Kerry Pechter from Retirement Income Journal, editor, founder. He does a lot more than that. And we're just so happy that you joined us on this. So with that, I want to thank everyone for joining me and Kerry on this episode of Fun with Annuities. And I'll see you next week. My name is Stan, the Annuity Man. Thanks for listening to Fun with Annuities. Please hit the subscribe button and make sure to go to my site at theannuityman.com, where you can run your own SPIA, DIA, and QLAC quotes and see a live feed of the best MYGA fixed rates in the country, and even get indexed and income rider quotes as well. You can also sign up for my 6 Annuity Owner's Manual books, and I'll ship them for free and under no obligation. I also encourage you to schedule a one-on-one call with me, Stan the Annuity Man, so we can have a full discussion of your specific situation. It will be the best brutally factual and truthful advice you will ever get, and that's one guarantee you should definitely take advantage of. So join me next time for the #1 annuity podcast on the planet, Fun with Annuities.